I'm Bob Jones. I'm from Chatham Financial. We're in Kennett Square. Anybody know where Kennett Square is?
Far.
Yeah.
All right.
Mushroom capital of Pennsylvania.
Self-proclaimed mushroom capital of the world, in fact. Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of the group. You know, when we started our test community, I would have loved to have had it in Kennett Square. It'd be a much shorter drive for me. But when I drive in, thinking of all of you driving that same drive the other direction, it's something I would wish on many of you. But anyway, what I want to share tonight is about, so the topic for tonight, we have another speaker, John Klose, who will be coming in later. He's stuck in traffic. But the general topic tonight is building automation teams. So he's going to share his experience, and we have a great test automation experience happening at Chatham. So we've been doing things with automation. So this is roughly how I have things organized today. So the major steps or stages that we took as we were developing things. We started, like a lot of people, with commercial tools. We went into open source tools. Now we're working with blended teams. So that's one way of organizing things. But as I was kind of reflecting on my slides, I realized that there are really two other big stages that are kind of implicit in this whole thing. In the early years, most of the work that we did on the test team was very test inward focused. We worked on things as a test team. And it was later, in the more recent stages, where things were open. So as we were working with open source tools, we could share code with the developers. Like we're committing things into SVN instead of in the Quality Center. We're getting into bitter arguments about technology. And when we were in the early stages, people liked us. We're nice people. We didn't get into those big arguments, and we thought it was because maybe we were well liked or we had everything right. The thing that I learned is no, nobody cared. When we were using VBScript and QTP, that's a tester thing. I don't want anything to do with it because it's kind of in this quirky system. But as we started working in real code and doing things that were really shared, then all of a sudden the knives came out. So it's kind of the benefit of success is that you get into these bitter contests about technology. So as you're building teams and thinking about things, the knives, they hurt, they're just bitter and awful, but it's also a sign of success. So think of rainbows if it gets bitter. That's what I'm saying here. We had a lot of unintuitive things happening, so this was like the road to hell, good intentions. We thought we did things right, and boom. By the way, interrupt me at any point when I have, if you have questions or if you think I've overstated things or just weird. So with our commercial tools, we started as a lot of people do, right? Like we had some QTP licenses. We hired a couple testers with QTP skills. I mean, that's how I joined Chatham as a tester with QTP skills. And oh, by the way, the structure you're going to see on this, for each of those stages, I'm going to tell you what we did, and then what we solved, what was the rainbow part of things, and then, I don't know, what would be the opposite of rainbow, the problems that we created. I don't have a good metaphor for it, but with our commercial tools, we hired testers with automation skills, we had the tools, and we did the right thing. So we skipped the whole record and play aspect, so we didn't have that kind of anti-pattern. We coded our tests in QTP, and we built things that added value. There were a couple of us who were doing this as the big part of our job, and that did lead to one problem. Our test code was fragmented, so if you're coding with somebody else, that other guy's code is always going to be terrible because, of course, it's not your code. So our test code was fragmented. We weren't leveraging anything, and of course, there's some stuff with we had a split between people who were doing their traditional testing role and those who were doing the automation, which is something that you really want to discourage on your team, right? It creates a two-class system. And when you're working in technology, the coding skills are always going to be the thing that's valued. They can tell you that it's whatever's valued, but and other things are, but the coding skills there's always going to be this implicit premium on that. So you want to stay away from that. Nancy?
How did you guys pick QTP?
Sunny?
I think that was a tool that was most
we looked at a number of different tools, but that tool we thought was the most robust, had the biggest community of support. I think it came down to mostly that. A tool that was widely used by the community. So if we decide to hire somebody, we can find that skill set readily available. If we have questions to see how somebody implemented that, we can kind of use those as patterns. With other tools, we didn't have the same support. HP is kind of like a double-edged sword. They have this great product that continually support. Somewhat calls it this. So that's how we came about using that tool.
And we were using web forms too, so that limited, we couldn't use all the open source tools. In fact, we still have QTP tests running because we have legacy apps that have support. The biggest thing, back to this, that was the problem that we created, as I mentioned earlier, is we started down this path of the Klose tool set. So we're working with QTP, and there's really no interaction with the rest of the dev team. And Nancy briefed me on this later, but QTP gave us a non-sexy skill set of DB script, which you can get things done, but you don't brag about it.
Be sexy when you need it to be. You can do things.
Keep drinking.
You're right, Bob. It's no Pearl. Pearl is super sexy. We can all agree on that.
And I think we did it. Actually, later I do describe what the perfect open source programming language is. So, because surprise, I don't think
Was it Python?
maybe. So we had tests running, we had value running, but we also had a need. We didn't have a good framework. And there was a point with Chatham where we were growing from one office to including testers in Krakow. So we needed a way to work together. And if any of you are building up teams, like getting some framework, some people pattern is like really a key. So we added something that no one has heard about. It's sold by the biggest company in the world, probably, but it's BPT. It's business process testing. I put a picture up here so you can kind of see it. At a simple level, it's an abstraction layer on top of QTP. It allows you to create test components that you can drag and put in different order. You can string data between the tests. It has some benefits in that you can build a test with components that have already been built without knowing anything about the automation code. You just focus entirely on the business. But then when you're building the automation code for it, the way we had implemented it, there were kind of two levels of abstractions with it, so that you could you had to code for it under the covers, and there was libraries you could leverage and everything. But you could do stuff without having to know everything. You add value, and then as you had more experience with it, you just gain greater and greater skills. So I'll skip the automation hour part. That had its place, but it's again, this framework that we have on top. So the problems that was solved, it was a great path for people who do not have a lot of experience. So you could come in with like very little training. You begin to add value, like build out business cases and tests. For the automation level, you could write some automation code, leveraging the lower level libraries. But if you were more experienced, then of course you can write the libraries and find ways to solve clever problems. Because that whole scheme of dragging components together and passing the data, the data passing was pretty primitive. You couldn't pass objects for passing data. So there were clever tricks that you had to solve. And it really worked well. The most important thing, I think, about this is it taught us as a test team what a good test looks like. So while we were all writing tests, we were also running the tests every day. Everybody on the team was participating in analyzing the tests. If you want to find out how good that awesome test is that you wrote, look at it a week later when it fails and you're trying to understand why it failed. I think that's one of the, I guess, the best ways to really grow the automation skill of your team. It's like living with the test after you write it. But we learned how to do this. We learned how to do it at scale. And that was perfect. And the guardrails HP, I think we're on version 10, and they're now on version, I don't know, 15 or something. Every upgrade we had just broke all kinds of stuff. The vision that HP had for it went in this direction, we were using it like this, and so I became really afraid of any kind of upgrades. When things broke, you were just completely screwed. We actually spent a lot of time in writing applications to sit over top of Quality Center to make it work better for us. Everything from if you were changing a test status in Quality Center, it might take 12 seconds to make a status change. And that sucks. That's just changing an enumeration on something. So we built web pages with like Ruby and Sinatra on top and have to drive that stuff. But this was perfect at this level. It got us moving. But it also tied us into this closed system for a long time.
Did HP drop support for these guys in the older systems?
No, they're...
They kept supporting the older version?
Yeah, they dropped support on it. I don't want to touch it. It's just that sleeping dog. It's just going to crumble apart if we move it. And we're supporting old applications. Our system administrators stop by my desk every month or so because there's also an old hardware. And so someday it's just going to go dark, and there's not going to be any hardware to turn it up. But we just keep rolling the dice. But this was also going to keep, as much as I dread going into these pieces right now, it was one of the best things for us, like raising our level of skill. All right, so we were working with these, and it wasn't the most revered language. We were looking for something better. We weren't looking to do anything like really fancy. We just wanted to gain some modern programming skills. I have a reference here to this book, Everyday Scripting with Ruby. It's probably 7 or 8 years old right now. It's not even the best book in the world. But it was a great inspiration for us to look at Ruby, to pick up something and move forward with it. So a couple things I loved about this book is like this is how we model all our training. Is the author, Brian McNair, specifically stayed away from doing anything big, like with doing any kind of GUI automation with it or making a new framework. The stuff that you kind of expect, like Selenium and water and all that. He stayed away from that and just focused on using this scripting language as a lever, as a tool that testers can use if you need to do something like read the directory of a file server every day, or look for changes in a file server. Like things like that, they're just like everyday tasks that if you're doing manual testing or exploratory testing, he focuses on the stuff that just makes you stronger at that. And I thought that was perfect. And we did that. I mean, we even had a script to go through and kill all the blocks in UTP. Again, it's one of those things that Quality Center is killing us, and just use this to go through a little command line prompt to load things away, which is just perfect. So we did this by ourselves. It was blind reading the blind. I tried to read half a page ahead of people so I could know what to introduce the topic when we get together to discuss it. But we learned quite a bit with that. And then the other thing that we did that just was great is that we did Ruby challenges. So these were where, as work group members, we would do everything from making a Sudoku, that wasn't a Sudoku song, it was a Scrabble score, a Scrabble style.
Scrabble dictionaries.
Yeah, reading different APIs to manipulate things. But just we progressively got more and more challenging. And the big moment happened, the Python guy came into the group and used Flask, I think, to just put some of what he was doing into a web framework. And we're like, holy shit, we can do this? Because making web apps was just something that we weren't thinking was in our scope. But as soon as we saw that Python web app, we're like, we can just better in Ruby. And we started using Ruby's Sinatra library, which is kind of like C#'s fancy. It's like Flask Everything has got drinking recreation classes.
There's a reason for that.
We're drinking more better. So as soon as the first person did that, all of a sudden, it really pushed the team. We started trying to outdo each other. So if we're making this Scrabble solver, well, of course you're going to make this really cool web app with it, which all look terrible, by the way, because we're not front-end developers, and there's things like JavaScript that have to happen. That's just awful. But we're doing it, and this is the kind of thing that gradually began to boost us as a test team, because all of a sudden, like the mystery of what the feature developers on our teams were doing was, like the mystery was reduced a little bit. We got to see behind the curtain, and it became more accessible to us, and that made us a stronger test team. That was what we did. Sorry, the solve part. Great language, that's evident, but it had this low barrier of entry. So if you're looking for something, in a team like where you are using commercial tools, Ruby's great. It allows you to move pretty seamlessly from VB script. A lot of the things you can do, like if you're working with arrays in VB script, you can do everything, but it's kind of clunky to write a lot of stuff. And all of a sudden you get into Ruby and it's like, your array.each do something, and it's like, wow, now everything's done. So you're able to get into it easy, and then it has just great depth. Those Ruby challenges, so if you're working that Scrabble solver, the thing that I was surprised about, and I think it's a key thing, I think, if you're bringing your team up, is having something that's not related to the day job. So you just drive it and let your brain work on it. And then, when you do have those work problems, all of a sudden somebody's like, the thing I did for the whatever, challenge that made no sense to anything, I want to use that same solution here. Yeah.
Was there any pushback from other people on the team about them spending time doing like non-work related programming?
No, we did try to manage that though. So when we were doing the initial class, like going through that book, we were coming in a little bit early before work, so a half hour early, kind of working a half hour in, and we tried to kind of work around the edges, but we're showing value. So first off, the tech culture at Chatham is strong. So seeing people bringing their skills up is, unless we're completely screwing the works, that's going to be encouraged. And if you work around the edges, show the value, that kind of reinforces. Yeah.
Did you find that as you started to put more of your results and the things you're programming on the web where it was accessible to other people, that it began to open doors for you, or was that something that came later?
It definitely opened doors for us. It allows us to solve problems that to this day I don't know how we would solve. So SQL works for another company. So he works for Bellatrix Software Factory, and they're nearshore. It's a nearshore company, and he does not have full access to all of our systems. So some of the security gates are there, and this gave us a way to get around some of the security gates.
Right.
In a responsible way. But things that machines that SU could not access to run tests and things like that, if he would send a command through our web page, then it would work. So we were definitely seeing the value as soon as we started the.
Did you see other groups take an interest and start to look at your results more seriously once they were presented in a web-enabled form?
Every day. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure. It happened gradually, but that's an everyday thing right now. I saw with Sean. He's working on something similar at Comcast. We use Ruby Cucumber for our Ruby tests, and if you're using that, the built-in results viewer is good, but it also sucks a little because you have to wait for all of your test runs to complete before you get results. You just have this one monolithic result form, and if you have 2 test runs, you can't merge them together to see what the actual state of your application is. So we wrote an application called QView that aggregates all of that. When I was talking with Sean, it was exactly it was like we were in the same building the whole time. And that's an everyday part of things. Like Scrum teams in the morning start with pulling these results up. We have applications that have been built during our hack weeks by people in the test team that are used by the business team. because we're in Python. We have a table differ, so it takes Excel reports and it's a really great way to compare Excel reports, and then the diff results persist with a URL that you can pass around. So yeah, we use it in technology and in the business now. It really took off way more than I ever expected. So, right, the dog retrieved the stick, but the stick is the dynamite. Ruby's not the main development language. We're a C# shop. This isn't it's not the greatest problem in the world, because if you're a good developer in C#, just look at Ruby and think, wow, this is like C# except you get rid of all the awful stuff and not understand it. But it kind of reinforced this whole separation of like what we do as a test team and what the rest of the dev team does. Some of the programmers, the feature developers, were excited about us working with this and wanted to share it, but if we had spent all the time in Ruby working in C#, that would present other problems, different sticks of dynamite. But like right now, although other things being equal, we'd be in a better place because we'd have this shared language, we'd be using the same tool sets, and we'd be in a better place. And as I go back and think about the problems that we created, I'm not even sure which ones of those I would want to shortcut, because they solved different problems. For instance, if we had gone straight to C# and started working with the Scrum team with people who eat, breathe, C# all day, and we were working on a problem, it's kind of easy to lose control of it, because if you're the complete novice and you come in with the exact, the full expert, and you want to code a complex automation task, well, let me do it, enhance, and it's done. Where if you're working in Ruby, they're like, well, I can help you, but I have to look at it with you and try to figure it out. And you're like, well, this is perfect, because I want to just figure it out, and I want to learn and grow my skills. So the separate language helped things, but it also hurt things. I'm not sure what the right answer is if I was redoing life. Let's see. Another book reference in here, Cucumber and Cheese. This is a cool book. So if you want to get into using BDD, Cucumber, Gherkin, all these great behavioral-driven development things, this book is really excellent. So Cheesy is the guy's Twitter handle. That's where the name comes. He helped. Well, I had looked at Cucumber before, and we had even used some hack weeks on it, and I just didn't see how we could make that change to use it. When I looked at it, I just saw the shortcomings from things that I really liked about BPT. And then I had an opportunity to meet with Cheesy, which, by the way, is a little side note. I followed him on Twitter, and I'm not like a big Twitter guy, but I try. And I noticed that he was in Lancaster City for a couple days, which from Kennett Square is much closer than coming to Philadelphia. So I just asked him when he'd get together for a beer. And then a couple of us went and talked to him. And it was in the conversations with him and some references to this book, which I realized later that I had not read, even though I said I had read it. It really changed my whole perspective on this. He wrote several Ruby gems, which are Ruby packages that you can, like open source packages that you can use, that handle a lot of the problems that I saw in Cucumber. So his page object gem is a big one that solves a lot of problems. We use that right now, and it allowed for instant migration. And just this whole approach. The book's a good book. It's not a perfect book because it's one of those like that you write it and you publish it in iterations, but it really kind of turned how we look at this tool set. So, and Water WebDriver. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. You're probably all familiar with Selenium. In the world of open source GUI automation tools, there's things like WebDriver at the very bottom right now, and then on that same stack of software is Selenium, and Water WebDriver kind of sits on top of that. So as you look through the gem dependencies, like they're all kind of in there, but thing that made the most sense to me. I think it goes back to the way that these things were developed. If I get my history right, Selenium was developed by application developers who were writing unit tests and needed something else to get to this next layer of testability. And Water was written by testers who were looking to solve automation problems. And because of that, the interfaces evolved differently. And from my perspective, the Water interface is really intuitive. You still have all the power to do everything that you can do with like Selenium, but it's made more sense. Those two projects have been converging a little bit more, so I'm not sure how important it is right now, but if you're getting into the Water WebDriver, it's definitely worth looking at. So what did we solve and what problems? One of the best things right now is that, so with QTP, these were expensive licenses, and we were always like calling each other, like, hey, can you get out of this? Because we use a floating license, and it was pretty terrible. So as we moved away from that and started developing our tests with Cucumber, now all the testers are working in IDEs. We have cool dark background, so we look just like everybody else in the dev shop. And there's no license, but you just have a cool look. You can even use Sublime, and then you really hack with the best of them. When we did this, what was the guy who was seeing the rainbows? Whoa! Right? This next is that step. This is our double rainbow, I think. When we did this, we were able to introduce the whole BDD culture into the company, and we don't do this perfectly. We don't do it nearly as much as I'd like. We look at some people, but we do it. And this thing that we do is we can pull off pre-commit automated acceptance testing. So we're writing the tests at the same time, or ahead of the application developer. So they're able to use these tests not just as a tool to make sure that we can break things accidentally, but they're able to use it to make sure that they're building the right thing. And that's just perfect when you can pull that off and make that happen. There's some tricks with how you, there's a number of, it's not always easy, I'll say that, but you can do it with the UI, you can do it with services, you can do it at different layers, but the programmer knows what you're going to be looking for before he commits the code. So you're helping reduce bugs, you're testing quality into the system, which we typically say can't be done.
So bringing Cucumber,
Yeah.
are you writing the feature files, or is it a collaboration with the business owners? How's that whole process?
It's a little bit of all of that. The thing that you want to strive for, though, is to have that feature file written with the tester, programmer, product owner, that kind of collaboration. It forces a lot of those questions to be answered when you're just working in Notepad. Dark, do you have any?
I'll answer that.
Yeah.
Well, we do work closely with product owners, so we usually have like testers and product owners, sometimes the developer, and they'll come up with the Cucumber spec, and then that will translate to code later on. So that's nice to have an experience that is business for them.
So if you're, it sounds like you use the product manager, it sounds like you're working on some type of environment.
Yeah.
So you doing that before the sprint starts, or are you doing that as part of the sprint?
Both. It depends what you're working on. Try to limit the amount of overall planning that you do, and do where just when it makes sense. I was surprised by how well Gherkin has taken off our culture. Because at Chatham, nobody likes to be told what to do. We have all these independent processes, and it's like herding cats together to do the same thing. So I was really skeptical that Gherkin would kick off as anything useful. But we kind of use it in two layers right now. One is just simply as a way to describe functionality without thinking about how to automate it. And then the other is, depending on who you're working with or your team's process, then we'll take it into the use for the actual test. By the way, if you're not familiar with Gherkin, it's that structured, given, when, then kind of language. Like, given I'm on the new patient page, when I submit my insurance card, then I get a message saying hello. So it's things that are written in like people words that it's very structured, but the Cucumber application processes it as a regular expression and identifies like what are the main things, and then it maps that to pieces of automation. And then, like some of the things, like if I feel like given I enter Bob in the new patient field, you can like take out that word Bob by some programming and assign it to a variable, so you can do other kinds of programming, and you have Bob as a variable and you use that. So it's pretty cool, especially when it works, because like, you can do all this stuff in Notepad. It's order an IDE, but it's just so open and accessible. So this is a testing solution, field development solution. I put this in here because this is when I started to feel the burn. You're working on test stuff, that's fine, but now all of a sudden, like you're working in IDEs, and you're working. One time I made a passing comment to someone, like, "This is going to change how we develop it." I didn't bother to get asked if they wanted development change. I guess was my hubris. But I also saw it as there's no downside to it. And if we do this and it helps, it's just all upside, so why should anybody care? But what I did learn is that we were moving from that closed, test inward focus to, test outward and part of the full development team. So people started having opinions. Opinions came out of the woodwork on everything we do. Again, that's that good sign. Taking life out of your back. It's a love knife. Just move to people for a moment. So as you're building an automation team, this is the hardest part. I didn't realize this was a real thing until I Googled to get the picture today. One of the recruiters I was talking to, you guys might know this, he said, what you're looking for is a purple squirrel. Because I was just simply looking for someone with test experience, who knows how to program, and maybe has a GitHub page. And just a couple simple things. And also wants to work in Kenneth Square. We've got that part. And it's tough. No matter what I don't know if you guys have had this experience, no matter what you put in a job rec, if it has the word test or QA in it, you're going to get like the standard set of people who apply to everything that says test or QA. So you've got to get rid of those. The recruiters often send those along. And then you get this like really small group, and then it's just tough to get. That's actually one of the reasons that I helped organize this group, is because I wanted to find other people who were doing this, because it seemed like it was pretty lonely. I knew that there were purple squirrels out there because we had them on our team, but we wanted more of them. And I just wanted to find other purple squirrels. So, my squirrels. We went through 2 stages on the hiring. So, as Sonny mentioned, we first started out just looking for testers with QTP experience. And that's where I am, or was. But then we changed. As we started doing more stuff with Ruby and Python, we started looking specifically for those types of people who were interested in working in test. So it was a little bit of a shift. You always have like all these like skills that you're looking for, like what the right balance is, and trying to find the right thing. I found that it's more difficult to teach a tester who doesn't know how to program, like just on the job and getting that done right there, than it is to teach someone who has those skills already and has that interest in test and wants to work there. Exceptions to every rule, but that was my primary observation. So we changed that, and one thing, even though hiring is super hard, we found one thing became easier. The more technical we were, the easier it was to be attractive to the technical testers when we finally did talk to them. Technical people can sniff each other out, and they recognize each other, same sense or whatever. And Once we started those conversations and what we were doing, what we were talking about, the closing of that deal became much easier because of what we were doing. So as you're growing your teams, like you might find that kind of progression as you go. It also became easy to find out who was blowing smoke in their resumes. That'll probably offend somebody. But one of the things that I found, for instance, this is back when we were looking for the test for the PGP experience, with exceptions, but almost always, if somebody had load runner on their resume, they were lying. That would mean load runner on somebody's resume meant they walked through a room where somebody was running load runner applications. So yeah, don't trust the resumes. When you're doing the teching on something, have people code for you. Do some whiteboard coding, talk through things. Don't take any assumptions. Anybody else have that experience? Yeah. So we solved things, and we were successful in raising the technical bar. The first couple of times that you'll hire technical testers on your team who are just like way beyond you, it's humbling, and the self-loathing happens. You're just not quite as smart as you thought you were, but it's also awesome too because you learn from those people. But you raise the technical bar. Smarter people than me, which is great, easy to do sometimes. Problems though. We're still living with this first bullet, the reduced emphasis on the art of software testing. So as I was seeing things, I had in my mind this kind of base set of technical skills that I wanted to have on the team. And other things we would work with. The technical aspect can be really, oh by the way, so everybody on the team, it's an agile test team, everybody on the team is an automator. So there is no non-technical part of the team. So everybody is an automator. We do like kind of full stack tests, right? We build our tools, we write tests, but we also, we'll do manual testing when it makes sense. Just like the developers are going to do manual testing of their applications as they develop it. So, we're like that full, on the test team, we have like that full set of skills. But we did lose the focus on this art of testing sort of thing. Right now, we're looking at sort of relearning and reintroducing to Chatham exploratory testing. I have to get the book Explored by Elizabeth. You have not read the book Explored. Okay. So there's a book Explored. It's a thin book. It's easy to read. Sunny's still there's nothing like really earth-shattering about it, but it does bring back, like, it has some like formal structure for exploratory testing, and it's great just for bringing like this back into focus. Because you can use exploratory testing with technical testing, you can use it with your full development team, but you need to keep that art part of things working. So testing is a good mix of art and science. So we have that. I would rage whenever I hear this question during the debriefs after interviews. So we find a great technical person, we get them in, they want to code, they want to do tests, and then you have in the debrief these comments like, yeah, but that person really want to be in test. It's like, they're just enraging because we'd be looking for that exact person. I need to have people giving feedback that was just kind of like, they weren't getting it, but whatever, gouge eyes.
Wait, gouge out your own eyes?
Any eyes around them.
I don't want to work with you, Bob.
Just don't say that. You're fine. I don't think it happens. All right, so this is kind of where we are right now, and it's cool because it's the result of all this work that we did, with hiring and training. Programmers are testing, testers are programming. Let me read it. I'm saying it wrong. Testers are programmers, programmers are testers. We're doing each other's work right now. So they're on on many teams, it's awesome. So you might have somebody who's primarily doing testing, but they'll take a couple of features to develop, and the programmers that they're working with will test their code. When we had ThoughtWorks in the spring, they had the same idea. That was great. It's like when you find a small bug, rather than waste the time to write a ticket and to go through this formal process, just fix it. Depends on what your requirements are for managing changes. But the only requirement that we have in terms of formal roles is that you can't test your own code. So it doesn't matter if you're a programmer or a tester, as long as you have somebody else involved with the verification process. There's no other gates on it. And so we're working through that right now. Testing has become a full development team activity. So that's awesome. We have people who never cared about stuff before, who are getting in and checking things. We have, just some of our best, developers working in our frameworks. All the stuff that you want to happen is happening. We have, well, this is a cool thing. Again, I think that pre-commit and developing at the same time as the features being developed. You don't have to worry so much about testability in your code. When we were doing QTP, we were writing those tests like months after the features settled down enough so we could develop it. And then you find that somebody would have used a custom control for a combo box. Right? What's the harm in that? The harm in that is you might spend a week trying to figure out how to select something for that combo box. And nobody wants to go back into that code and fix it because that's old code. It's terrible anyway because it's old. But nobody wants to crack that open. When you're developing together, especially in these blended teams, if something sucks and you're sitting next to the person and they're coding and writing test code at the same time, and they see that what they wrote sucks, they just fix it right there. So you actually can get a lot of velocity with that. There's a commitment that you have to do with it, but that's worked out really well for us. We have more people looking at our code. All right, so problems. We lost autonomy to make some high-level decisions on the test. This primarily affects me as at leading. People who are at the project teams, I think that their decision-making capabilities are increased. So it's good for everybody but me. So it's terrible, right? More complex decision-making. You mentioned everybody has an opinion, so you can't just say let's just test and decree that this is the way we're going to do it. It doesn't happen like that anymore. Confusion about quality, blah, programmers, good testers. I'm wondering if we have the need, since we have the people who have not traditionally been doing the testing, like how do you know if everybody's doing a good job? Do we need to qualify it? But then again, how do you know that the traditional testers are doing a good job? So maybe it's a disingenuous kind of question. The final one here is losing testers to feature developer roles. So that's frustrating, right? Because you have to find these purple squirrels, bring them in, and then you're someplace else. If you want to go glass half full with it, you can be that you're planting tester sleeper cells among the programmers. But you're testing, festing the dev teams, which actually is true. And that's, so I have people who have been on the test team right now, product owner roles. So I have, test focus there. We have the testers who are doing programming, so they're bringing the test focus with them. So that's all awesome, but it can also be frustrating as you have to start everything over again. Let's see. I don't really want to go into this too much. With the future, I don't know what the future is going to be with testing or what makes sense. So is a strong test team the best thing? Or is it that you build a strong test team and then you lose all of those testers to the dev teams and you start over as exploratory testing team? You could go in a number of directions with this. So it's almost the dog chasing the car and it gets it and then all of a sudden things are pretty terrible because you have a car. So I was thinking, these kinds of things, like the future of testing, might be an interesting auto test meetup. Maybe we can do a panel of some sort of how people are doing this. I don't know if you guys are thinking about it, but I struggle with these things. In this last one, done was like having a strong team with strong automators. Does that make their lives easier? I read an article recently that just really kind of gutted me. It was about a woman who was a tester, and she was technical. She was writing a lot of her own applications. She's doing the same stuff that you're doing, Sean. And she changed roles to a programmer job, to a regular feature developer job, and she felt like she was cheating. All of a sudden, it was too easy. She didn't have to defend, she didn't have to defend her technical skills anymore. It was just, I have this label, people respect me as this, and I make them to prove. So I don't even know if we're doing people favors by making these teams that we're all going to talk about today. Yeah.
I mean, what has been the objective result of all of this in terms of software quality? Escape defects, has it gotten better? Is there anything you can use to kind of, you were talking about how to tell what you're doing before you test it?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. We don't have good metrics for it. What I can tell you though is that definitely by like say 10 o'clock, but generally by 8:30 every morning Eastern time, I can tell you the release readiness of our production stack. So that's pretty sweet. We still have hot fixes, yeah. So overall quality, I don't know how to answer, but we know where we're at all the time. And that's a great thing. I don't really go back there, so. That's what I have in terms of slides. Are there any other questions? Anyone debunk anything that I said?
I have a question. When you are interviewing candidates,
Yeah.
you said you could sniff out the ones that you were looking for. What do those pheromones look like? I saw that you said check their GitHub page. I wonder if you could go into that a little bit more.
It doesn't, like my interviewing style is like really kind of, it looks kind of flowy. Like I generally ask people to tell me about themselves, and I suggest that they don't use their resume because I'm looking at that. And I ask for things like, tell me about a trip that you took hitchhiking or something. I just want to find out about them. They kind of weave their way into it. And then I try to pull, when I hit something, I try to pull a thread and go into it a little bit deeper. So you can generally tell a lot by those conversations. When we ask people to come in for like, the first on-site interview, we will do a coding thing online or on the whiteboard that we can learn quite a bit from. But I generally have my note paper when I'm interviewing the words agile, tech, passion, something else, and kind of check things off as I go. And you really want to see that passion in the tech stuff. Like if they're talking about writing some Arduino code or doing some of the Raspberry Pi, if those are great tools, you kind of like really get closer there without actually having to write code. Yeah.
Maybe not a mild debunk. I would just say that it seems like your mentality is very role-based. So when you talk about how we better because these guys can do deck and they steal our guys and maybe we should go back to doing exploratory testing, but why do we have to do that?